Hello, friends. Host Eric here, host of Talking with Famous People, and I want to talk about self-help, self-development, and my own experience with such notions and processes, and my perspective on them in the abstract and how they generally manifest. So, my first experience with them as a kid was having my grandfather actually do kind of like hypnosis stuff on me before when I went to sleep. I'd go lie in the bed and he'd go. Um, Breathe deeply, breathe deeply. And imagine your body is empty, and then an orange liquid is pouring into you. And it's a very relaxing orange liquid. And starts at your toes and it goes gradually up your whole body, right? And it'll say, first it touches your toes, and your toes get very relaxed, very relaxed. And you do this whole thing, and then I'd fall asleep pretty quickly in the process of doing it. It's like a spell he used to put me to sleep. Anyway, that was my first experience with that sort of thing. And that was before fifth grade because that grandfather was murdered when I was in fifth grade. Anyway, um, boo hoo hoo. I'm all torn up about it still. It was a long time ago. Regardless, uh, then in probably junior high or early high school, I began listening to self hypnosis tapes. I remember listening to one and trying to, it purportedly taught you how to read people's auras. And so I was trying to figure out how to read people's auras and what that meant. The problem basically was, and I concluded after listening to the tape a few times and trying to do what it said, is that they failed to adequately define what it is I'm looking for. And I put it aside and didn't listen to it anymore. And I think that was basically the end of my self-help tape phase. The self-hypnosis thing. The aura one killed it for me, basically. So then I proceeded through high school and early college, basically without a lot of self reflection or self awareness, particularly. And awareness of one's self concept and the capacity of one to work upon one's self concept in meaningful ways is really the beginning of metacognition and therefore the beginning of self development. I think the two things are I think the two things are more or less synonymous for an ENTP. Metacognition is self-development. For somebody like a ISFP, I think it works differently. And it's kind of the core message here is that the problem with almost all self-development is that it doesn't adequately differentiate between people. It doesn't adequately account for particularism while concurrently providing meaningful heuristics or general rules or prescriptive action or whatever. So there's a need in general, I think, to link metacognitively to link the framework with the contention level stuff. So if I'm arguing you should pray, what does that mean in terms of what I'm advocating is very much dependent on the framework through which I'm advocating it. So if I'm telling you you should pray because Jesus Christ is your Savior, it means one thing. If I'm saying you should pray because it's a process of prioritization of one form of awareness over a rational form of awareness, and that being able to switch priorities like that is preferable to not being able to switch priorities like that. And that's a very different line of reasoning for why you ought to pray. And depending on who you are, you will respond to each of those lines of reasoning very differently. Regardless, the point is that most self development stuff or self help stuff doesn't account for the competing frameworks and doesn't account for the difference between framework and contention level argumentation, basically. And what does account for it is a cognitive function that's Mason. Hi, Mason. What does account for it is a cognitive function model because at least then it taxonomies human experience into manners of awareness, is a good way to put it, as well as manners of attention, you can only be aware of so many aspects of a reality that your awareness is really creating, uh, but is drawn from an available set of data that's larger than that of which you are aware. So, I mean, that's kind of like the fundamental fact of reality that's significant in terms of human consciousness is that there is a set of data available that is greater than that of which you are aware. So then, which manner of awareness you choose to, or you, which the awareness you manifest is the reality you experience. The the awareness of that fact and your ability to will or apply intentionality towards how you how and when you are aware of things is the trippiness called human consciousness. Thoughts on that
I
initial
walked in
block
and we
of
talked about.
words? Josh, go ahead.
I walked in and I heard you talk about praying and human consciousness, and they've done electroencephalograms on people, and the same brainwaves are active. I don't remember which ones they are active when you pray as when you do um, meditation, self awareness meditation.
Um, okay.
I don't know.
So, like, this is
I heard you talking about praying, and also heard you talking about a competing construct for self-help, and meditation could be viewed as a competing um, way of self-help. And the same brainwaves are active when you do each of those activities.
okay. So let's look at
And
like.
what the
I'm sorry, Susie. I'll get to you in 1 second, but let's look at what you just said through the lens of what I'm saying. Your basic framework is here's some empirics, TI, that says that gives more information about this. That says here's an additional piece of data that will help us to better understand that prayer and meditation are the same sort of thing because they manifest the same kind of brainwaves. Well, that little narrative
Prayer
block,
requires belief.
hold on, that little narrative block right there is an example of contention level argument underneath a TI framing that is designed to present something that's FE consistent with what we're talking about, and everybody, it contributes to the conversation and is drawn from SI, your learned experience, your physical epistemology. All right, so Susie, go ahead.
I was just saying, what about psychiatry? Because in the end, you're the one who actually needs to reframe your thinking. It's
Well,
pretty much just pointing out you do this and this and this, and that is not beneficial for you because of that, that, and that. And you could also get that from a book in theory if you are able to understand and identify the message
I mean, I think
and relate it to yourself.
psychiatry offers two approaches. One, it could be yeah.
Psychiatry and prayer both require faith in the practice.
Hold on.
Meditation.
Let me complete my thought. Psychiatry can take a couple of different approaches. One of them is it can teach people to assess themselves. In other words, if people are not in the habit of doing objective self-criticism or any kind of self-assessment, it doesn't even have to be objective. There's lots of different ways to uh, come to the same conclusions in terms of self-assessment, but you have to be prepared. I mean, I think one of the key things that psychiatry can do is um, to frame the self as a process and to afford an individual, therefore, milestones or meaningful bits of status to acknowledge that they're in a process of growth, and this thereby allows them to better forgive themselves for past failures and to be more hopeful, optimistic, and positive about the future because they see themselves as something that's going somewhere rather than as a static, complete identity that's well defined, or is this and not that exactly, you know? Because that's one avenue in which
A work in
psychiatry
progress.
can help, is that kind of thing, is to teach people how to be their own psychiatrists. The other way in which it can help, in theory, is to do, I guess, researchy stuff like, well, let's find out how these things correlate. But the problem is almost all psychiatry fails to, it needs to be subsumed by the cognitive function model, not um, not consider the cognitive function model one of its competing ideas. Go ahead, new guy.
Social construct.
What?
Social construct.
Social construct.
What's a social construct?
Well, psychology, isn't it? I mean, if you're not the most dominant, you're gonna not gonna.
Well, I agree. It has a lot to do with hierarchy.
But like they even have something called cognitive therapy.
Yeah, cognitive behavioral
For
therapy.
us to be, well, yeah. I mean, like for INTPs, it'd be TI and SI, death loop, that they call it, isn't it?
Well, I mean,
Well,
hold on. I want to address the social construct thing first. Is psychiatry a social construct? Well, it's a manner of interacting
Pandering to it.
between individuals. It's a manner of one individual interacting with another, and it is built upon the legitimacy that we afford training. But the thing is, it's weird because it's like for being a teacher. Being a teacher, I'm sure, is like being a psychiatrist or psychologist. It's something you learn as you do it. You can't really be trained to do it because it's it's such a process oriented thing that it can't really be broken into steps. You've got to read the other person and the other people, and both, and if it's teaching, on a continual basis and adjust. It's the only way to do it. And so, as a consequence, training is kind of meaningless in both those fields. Like, I know already that to the extent that psychiatry can be useful, I'm a better psychiatrist than just about anybody. I haven't been to plenty of psychiatrists. I've been to 3 psychiatrists myself, and one marriage counselor with my. Actually, yeah, I went to the marriage counselor by myself on occasion as well. And he was the best counselor. He was the best psychiatrist I encountered. Well, I mean, my first marriage psychiatrist was good too, or psychologist, whatever you want to call it. But he was the best one I encountered, and I exhausted his ability to meaningfully add words to my life. Is it possible to meaningfully add words to someone's life? Yeah. And is it reasonable to think that somebody might be even worth paying money to have them add words to your life, to assess you and tell you what they see as an objective third party who understands things well about human cognition or experience or whatever? Yeah, but at the same time, it's also quite possible that it won't help. I think for intuitives in general, psychiatry ought to be more like, I guess like life coaching, or um, they have this thing called like accountability partners or something, where I understand how adults need to hold each other accountable. Susie's my accountability partner. She holds me accountable, and I appreciate it. And she does it in an effective way. She's a much better psychiatrist for me than any psychiatrist I could hire, and she's naturally occurring. I try to provide her value in return to the value she provides me. I don't know if I do or not, but I make a serious attempt to, and it's a matter of concern for me because I do understand that people have relationships of value exchange. Is what I understand instead of having FI. I understand my relationship with Susie as something that I benefit a great deal from, and that I understand that I like her. It always makes me happy to see her, but I don't make decisions based on my being happy to see someone. I don't think. I mean, it's so weird. I just don't get it. I don't get why I have feelings or what to do with them in general. But the thing is, what I do get is I don't want to feel like I'm taking more than I'm giving in any relationship. And this can sometimes even cause me problems because it's like I need to understand that that accepting the gifts of others is just as important a part as providing others value, and that is a way of providing others value as well. It's hard for me to understand that. Anyway, what are we talking about?
The best psychiatrist,
Self-help.
Oh yeah, self
best
help.
psychiatrist
Audra, you got
is
any
a
thoughts on this
psychiatrist.
stuff? Audra?
I did zone out for a while.
Fucking Audra. Every time,
I know some of
Audra.
the stuff you were
Every
talking
goddamn
about at the
time.
beginning.
You need to take some Adderall.
Hey,
Pay
You
attention.
talk too slow.
I talk so fast.
Nobody ever tells you that, right?
I talk so fast. Every time.
So repeat. Yeah. Anyway, I know some of the stuff you were talking about at the beginning about like self hypnosis and meditation. Some of those things. Like I've done some of that. I learned most of it through the martial arts. I think I developed some versions, but I found them to be quite refreshing. Some of those methods, and I've used the hypnosis thing to try to go to sleep. It works sometimes. Sometimes it doesn't. Meditation works when you don't get to sleep and you have any time. I always like meditation. It's like I can make my brain relax, which is, I don't know if you guys experience this, but it's not really a natural state for my brain.
Fuck no.
Unnatural state of mind.
But I've had to kind of like tweak them all to myself. It's like I've picked up lots of little bits and pieces and thoughts and ideas about some of these things, and none of them work for me, as is. I have to just amalgamate them, which I do with many things. But I think that's always been one of my problems with like the idea of self-help is they're like, here's your solution. I'm like, yeah, I don't believe it.
So I think what is an effective form of self-help is this. I think that people having conversations and then at least sometimes watching themselves, or at least knowing they're being filmed and it's made into media, is a self-improver.
It reminds me I have a phase, and then it's like, okay, yeah. It's been very interesting, I will admit, like watching myself hanging out in here.
Well, I mean, I think the key element to it is there's a lot of calling of bullshit, and I've had a lot of bullshit called on me. That's the thing. Is maybe it started out with me sort of being like, well, I'm calling bullshit on everyone's bullshit, god damn it. But then that sort of sets the rules, and it means that there's zero possible way I can avoid having bullshit called on me, because that would be the biggest bullshit of all, right? So it's
Be able to take what you can dish out.
Yeah, it's nice in here because it's the general mood and accepted behavior is a little more blunt, a little more direct. Addressal of such things is about, which is nice. You're like, hey, wait. You can kind of take a few layers off, right?
But even in here, I have gone back and watched myself and seen, oh shit, that wasn't very nice.
well,
I don't really dwell on the past behaviors, though. It's like I know that I vary from moment to moment. I know I get in like pissy moods, but I know I have to answer the phone. I'll be back.
Psychiatry can work as long as the psychiatrist is not doesn't have a god complex, and he allows you to participate in your own treatment plan, and that includes my psychiatrist doesn't try to blow blow air up my ass. He knows that he can't solve my problems, but I do always feel better when I leave there, and he knows he knows I'm very interested in these sorts of matters, and he affords me the luxury of not talking to me in lay terms. We have great conversations about about the human mind. And I love the way you're wearing your hat, by the way. And he also gives me great input on my medication regimen, which I think is another important part. He doesn't make me take anything I'm not comfortable taking, and when I think I need to change something, I go in there with a plan. We talk about it, and then we come to a decision together. And yeah,
Well,
I've seen 4 psychiatrists in my life.
That's not really self-help, is it?
yeah, that's like, I mean, the thing is, it is kind of a form of self-help in the sense that you go seek this out unless it's compelled upon you. And it just it's not really that much different than reading a book on self-help. But the thing is, uh,
I respect him though. I actually respect this guy. I've never respected any of my psychiatrists before. I'd always fuck with them,
well,
change
I'm
my
not trying to
symptoms.
just generally diss psychiatry. I'm saying that,
What's more of an art form than it is a science? Psychiatry is,
yeah,
or you have to be an MD
yeah,
psychiatrist to write medication.
I know. But what I'm saying,
Psychology is more of an art
what I'm
form.
actually saying though is the problem with most perspectives on self-development that come from a third party is that they don't account for the person's own awareness stack. Namely, if it's not subsumed by some sort of taxonomy of human cognition, then you're starting too far down the line. And if you think that a taxonomy of human cognition is a subset of something else, you're wrong. And so the problem with most self-help is that it doesn't include an actual analysis of cognitive functions. Is that simple? Because if you don't understand how you represent which chunk of human experience you represent fundamentally outside of your own control, outside of nurture factors, or regardless of nurture factors. In other words, if there may be some sort of causal relationship between your type and nurture factors, I'm not sure about that, but regardless of that, it it doesn't matter whether it's nurture or nature or whatever. The reality is no human can manifest anything close to all of the experience of human awareness that's possible. We represent a sliver of how a reality can be made out of a given stream of data. So it's that it's that awareness thing that ultimately is what self-development is. It's it's being increasingly aware of how your agency manifests through observation. Observation is the superpower of the living agent. It both is the reality that it manifests, and it um, and it represents less than all the potentiality for reality. So there are more potential realities than those we know, and to the extent that we are increasingly aware of the reasons why we know the reality we do and what it means to know the reality we do definitionally requires that we understand the alternatives to the reality we do and know. And when we have all that stuff in place, then you start to develop an increasingly rich set of experiences of any given reality because it sort of cascades out through the meta framework that goes oh, I'm experiencing this as blah, and it's because of this, and it could be distinctly experienced as this and this and this. And you become less a slave to your own inherent reflexes. Because what we have is reflexive awareness. It's it's why when I'm going through the world and well, it's like this is a perfect example. Kimberly and I last night we were talking about. She was explaining to me that it's a difficult process for her to go through all this stuff and decide what to get rid of and what to keep because she has various memories and whatever attached to all these various things. And I realized that I had not been affording that position enough. She'd said something like that to me before, but I just sort of dismissed it as, well, okay, yeah, I guess yeah, okay, that's nice. We're going to pretend to be nostalgic or something, fine. Well, she's not pretending to be nostalgic. I go through all of my stuff, and what do I think about it? Instead of looking at it in terms of my memories and shit, I go, well, what might I be able to use this for? Is this something I'm going to want to play with in the future? If not, get rid of it. If yes, keep it. She goes, what was the significance of this to me in the past? Was it significant enough? Do I really care about this? Or is it just something that's not really something I care about? That's
Well, you could
totally a different way of approaching it. It never occurs to me to go, is this something I care about? It occurs to me, is it something I use frequently? Or is it something I might find useful? Or is it something that has intriguing possibilities? Or is it something that's commonplace and not very interesting? So
it's interesting. I do use objects as memory anchors, but there's not emotion attached to them. It's just like, I know if I throw that away, I'll never remember that trip or whatever again.
Yeah, like I have a receipt from 1994 from a restaurant that I went to at a theme park. You could frame it this way: if someone uses certain objects to regain a memory or to experience nostalgia, that is a purpose. And you would probably, I evaluate everything I keep and everything I throw away based on the level of nostalgia that I would gain from it. And if it's an insignificant item as far as regaining memories, then I get rid of it. But if I can use it in the future to gain a feeling that I would otherwise not feel, then yeah, it does serve a purpose.
Okay, well,
maybe not.
Regardless, the point is that we have varying degrees of awareness. Let's just look at me and Kimberly. I'm aware of something in terms of its possibilities. Those are the realities. That's the reality in which those objects exist.
Number one.
This thing exists for me as, what can I use this for if it's not a belt buckle? I found this. I said,
It's following people around corners.
This seems to have potential for something.
About self-help?
It's got a nice hinge, yeah.
It's got.
Use it to grab someone's nose.
It's got this with little spikes. Okay, it's got a hole here, and then it's got a plate here. I'm thinking, well, it just seems.
There's a lot of possibilities.
It seems intriguing. Okay, now if Kimberly was looking at this, she'd probably think, it's probably Collins. She'd probably think, is this something of Collins that matters to Colin or matters to me? Is what she probably thinks. But now, even if this were Delilah's, that would never occur to me, because Delilah doesn't give a fuck. I know she's the same as me. That's why she leaves all her shit and doesn't give a fuck about it and treats it all like trash, because she doesn't value anything. And so I wouldn't worry about whether she values it. I would worry about what I could use it for. Again, same thing. And I'm still thinking about it now. But this is physical NE, which is an instrumental value for me. And it's kind of like a leisure value, whereas metaphysical NE, ideation, is more of an absolute value. It has significance to me. This sort of stuff is just playing. So, but the point is, both of us are manifesting realities that are different, and if we aren't metacogniting about this at all, if I'm not thinking, oh, that's an example of an SI-NE distinction I can make in a video, well then it only is that I'm not aware of my own the reality I'm experiencing is one of a set of potentialities. Instead, I just think it's the only potentiality, and I just act as though that's what reality is. So I think untethering from one's assumed what one assumes is universal to understanding that everybody's reality is particularistic for in terms of it only represents a sliver of human experience. Well, then that's the beginning steps of, I don't know, getting somewhere with something. Eventually, getting more and more yeah, and also like at the same time, which is the goal, maybe. I don't know what the goal is. That's the problem. TE shit. Who knows what the goal is? Actualization, enlightenment. That's the goal. I'm enlightened.
What about self-help video?
Self-help videos like this.
Yeah, okay.
That's a funny comment, Josh. I think I'll need some self-help by the time Eric finishes describing this belt buckle this video is. See, this is a good self-help environment because the person who presents himself as providing wisdom is taunted mercilessly. So, and that's what I say in autonomy debate school too. It's like my first job is to teach the kids to tell me to fuck off.
I was
Because
gonna say the belt buckle, made me pay more attention because
It was nice. Shiny.
anybody else
But
have
then I
any
got
last
distracted
comments
more.
on self-help before we close this video out?
Self-help tends, in my mind, I've always viewed it as bullshit. But I went off for 10 days to do a meditation course, Vipassana meditation, and you didn't speak for 10 days. You meditated 12 hours out of each day, and it was probably one of the best things I did non-medicinally for my mind ever. And I actually wish I had kept up with the practice because it taught me to act upon situations instead of reacting, and it taught me that pain and discomfort is only temporary, and so is pleasure. It's only temporary. And it taught me not to grow too attached to pleasure and not to get too freaked out about pain or discomfort. The teacher gave an example. You may have a friend, two friends. One guy is your or two people. One guy is your friend. One guy is your enemy. And when you see them, you automatically feel good. When you see your friend, you automatically get bad physical feelings when you see your enemy. But you don't see either one of them for 10 years. And people generally tend to react to current situations based on similar past situations. And so the guy that was your enemy 10 years ago may have turned into the nicest guy in the world. And the guy who was your friend 10 years ago may have turned into the biggest asshole in the world. But when you see them, humans will tend to react to the past. And you get these good feelings when you see your old friend, but then you find out he's an asshole, and you get bad feelings. You run into the enemy, you get bad feelings automatically, and he may have turned out to be a wonderful person. And it teaches one that that you need to act upon situations instead of reacting. That I did.
Okay.
I did get.
Well, that's good
I got a
advice
level
in
of
general, I
self-help.
suppose. That's generally good advice, Josh. Thank you for sharing that very interesting notion, I suppose. It's
I have one comment.
it's a pleasant enough notion, pleasant enough, I suppose. But I want to say this: being kick-ass is forever.